And I'm Dave Graber.
And I'm Kelsey Anderson.
And welcome to another edition of Buffalo Brief. We're going to get right into it today. We're going to welcome in Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan for an extended conversation about a whole variety of issues. Mayor, welcome to Buffalo Brief. Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
It's
Mayor.
great to be here. I like your new format. You changed it up a little bit in here.
The hardest working person in this entire operation is Dan Holland, and he is making all of this happen. I feel like each time you've come here, it's been a different iteration of this room.
Yeah, well,
Is it
thank
more
you, Dan.
comfortable?
Oh, yeah, it's very conversational.
Good.
Excellent. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, let's get right into this. New Now Next is what we'd like to do here. You were recently in Albany, along with other leaders from all across the state,
Right.
Asking legislators to include funding for your municipality in the state budget. It is colloquially known as Tin Cup Day because
what
the
they call
leaders are out there asking,
They're shaking.
begging for money. First, talk to us about how you feel that went. That was an important presentation for you.
Yes.
And what was your main priority to get across to legislators?
So there was two priorities. I sat with the mayors from Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, and, we have very similar economic problems. But most of their problems are driven by the fact that pension costs went up and health insurance costs went up in the last year, which gives them a gap they didn't account for. We're fully supportive of help in that category, but we have a problem that's different in kind than any of those upstate cities. So the city of Buffalo has been carrying a structural deficit over $60 million for a good number of years. And they've been paying it by different ways to get around it, but there's no other ways to get around it now. So, I came into office on January 1st, and the budget is the budget that's going to be there till July 1. So the budget I'm inheriting, has between the 20 and $40 million hole in it.
Right.
So in order to finish this year out, we're going to need a cash infusion, and that's the point I tried to make to my former colleagues. Now, going back to that,
Exactly.
It was quite a nice homecoming to go back to Albany. The panelists were, quite receptive. I had spoken to them all last year before I was elected about the unique problems Buffalo is having. So we're hoping that message got across, and we'll hopefully get some results.
You kind of held no punches there in Albany, with some blame there. How did we get here exactly?
Yeah, we've been talking in the office about the anatomy of a financial disaster, right? So for 11 years straight, Buffalo decreased the revenues that were coming in, which meant they did a couple tax cuts. Money went down, but those same 11 years, your expenditures went up.
Yeah.
So that means they had to take money out of the savings account. And then they did it a second year. Then they did it an eighth year. And then it was about to hit the fan, and then ARPA money came in.
Yep.
So tragically, we used half or more of our ARPA money to close the budget gap.
And Mayor, wasn't it like a total of something like 300 plus million and more than 150 was used to fill the gap?
Yeah. So
Amazing.
Like this is once in a lifetime money
Right.
to come to cities. Cities around America and New York State, they rebuilt community centers with that money. They put in brand new pools. They opened contract negotiations, took out onerous provisions. They retooled their cities on this. Buffalo wasn't able to do that because we just used it to pay our operating expenses. You can't cry over spilt milk for too long, but holy cow, that was a blown opportunity. So, we're in almost a generation of fiscal mismanagement. So the last control board left, 15 or so years ago, they left us with a big savings account, which we call a reserve account. The previous administrations proceeded to tap into that reserve account. So every year when the revenues went down, the expenditures went up, they kept using that to cover the gap. But now it's gone.
Yeah.
I have $0 of unassigned fund balance. Like, if you're a homeowner or a household, they say you should have 60 days of salary in the bank.
Right.
Yep.
Well, Buffalo's got 0 days of salary in the bank. And this is why we need help to get out of this current year as we're building our budget for 26, 27.
Are there many cities Buffalo size and even smaller, I would say, who have no rainy day fund, who have nothing in their savings accounts?
No, we're unique. Dunkirk's having a lot of hard times.
Oh, my goodness.
But
Yeah, sure.
that's just about it. I mean, if you tell other mayors or other comptrollers what the problems you have, they look at you like they can't believe what you're saying, because it's against every common fiscal practice to do what we've been doing on the regular. But, if you look at that same 11 years when our revenues went down, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, they all had mild tax increases over those 11 years. And that's why we are in this big problem and they are not. Wow.
Yeah. There's also some unused funding. And this was something you actually had talked about
Yeah.
when you were running. How much in unused funds are there exactly? And why wasn't that used? And it was mainly for, road
Roads,
infrastructure.
Yeah. So, we're accelerating a project now called Mid-Main Street. But the money for that project had been sitting around. So, we're finding millions of dollars of grants who had been unspent. Money that we bonded ourselves that we're paying interest on, not spent. So, we're trying to clean all that up. And we're trying to do it, in this environment of our budget office has half the number of employees, they should have. So during this period of the declining revenues, City Hall didn't backfill a lot of jobs. So we have jobs that need to be filled in order to get the city, going again. So you can't spend the grant money unless you have the people in the budget office, doing the grants management, and you can't spend the money unless you have, people who are, writing out the bids for contractors, to bid on. So we're really trying to get our arms around that, but it's going to take a little while. So we hope, by the end of 100 days, we have a better idea on all these different antiquated, systems. We have a department in City Hall. You can clock in or do your pay stubs 4 different ways to record your hours.
Seems superfluous.
Yeah, I mean, how many ways can you record your hours here?
Just one.
One. Yeah, so we have 4, which means then you're chasing all this paperwork around. Yeah. And, when we first came in, we were told, here's your paper timesheets to fill out. You think, no.
What are we doing?
Just because the building's old doesn't mean you have to have antiquated ways like that.
And don't even get me going on the building.
Oh, goodness.
So
It's beautiful.
It is
beautiful, right? But it's an old house that needs some love.
Yeah.
So you walk into the beautiful lobby, artwork, terracotta. Over half the light bulbs are out.
Yes, it is so dark
It's
in there.
very dark in there.
Because they change the light bulbs. So as they changed over maintenance staff, the new maintenance people weren't told that they have access to a lift and to be trained on the lift of how to get to the light bulbs.
So they just left them dark.
They don't know how to get up there. So, and then we also had a lighting plan put together by a private contractor who told us exactly what watts and volts to have to make sure the artwork looks the best. Well, they can't find the lighting plan. It went somewhere. So this is just an idea of.
Wow.
So when you walk into City Hall now,
Oh, man.
it looks a little unkempt. The lights aren't working, and even around some of the artwork, parts of the frames are missing. So we just haven't invested in City Hall, just like we haven't invested in snowplows. We haven't invested in garbage trucks. We haven't invested in streets. So, but City Hall, to me, it's a real illustration, right? So when you walk into City Hall, you should stand up and say, wow, this is my City Hall, and it's beautiful. So that's what we want to bring back. We want to bring back the luster of City Hall. 6 years from now, it'll be 100 years old. So we're putting together a City Hall at 100. We're starting now. I went to a Learn to be a Mayor school at Harvard.
You're
in
kidding,
December.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's fantastic. And one of
Those
the
exist.
Yeah,
huh?
that's
they
amazing.
do. Yeah, it's amazing. They had 75 mayors there from less than that, probably under 50, from all over the country. But one of the things they really taught you was the best things you're going to do as mayor, they won't bear fruit until 10 years. So
Interesting.
the stuff you're putting together, the next mayor is going to be doing that work. And they gave an example of all these big buildings going up in both Boston and New York City, that the planning for those were done a decade earlier. Mayor Bloomberg out of New York City did the plans and started the infrastructure work to get these buildings going. And he's been out of office, well over a decade.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting way to look at it. So you really got to be looking in the future, and that's why we're looking at City Hall at 100. You want to talk about snowplows?
Let's talk about snowplows.
Well, here, let's talk about the Fiscal Stability Authority first, because that's among the things you were asking for the legislature in the state to give you the green light on. You want to borrow up to $500 million through the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority so that you can use that money. That's another untapped resource that you're
Right.
Can you explain how that works? Because that's $500 million that Buffalo doesn't have. Who pays it back?
Sure.
When does
Yeah.
who gets called on the carpet on that?
So just to be clear, you put a high amount of what they can borrow, so you don't have to keep going back for authorization. So it's up to that amount of money, but any borrowing has to go through the council, has to be approved by the comptroller and signed by the mayor. So you would only want the Fiscal Stability Authority to borrow for you if you're in trouble. So this year, even if like parking lot sales go through, all that good stuff happens, we're still 20 or 30 behind.
Got it.
With no way to close it. So generally what you do is like a company, you restructure and you do long-term debt. So you would take out a bond to pay off the debt to get out of 26. You would pay that back over 10 years.
Got it.
So that would be the idea behind it. But in order to get that done, we need Albany to change the Fiscal Stability Authority's legislation to specifically authorize them to do that.
Got it.
In this budget year, we're just finishing, you're always a little bit behind. So in order to close out 24, 25, they had to take out a short-term note.
How much was that?
I think 7 million.
That was basically that gap they had left over, 7 million.
Right. So this is with all sorts of shenanigans. You still have this left over, but we want to get out of the shenanigans business. So when we put the 26, 27 budget out, it's going to show what the costs really are, what the true overtime costs are, what the costs are to actually run the city the way it's supposed to be run. So what we've done is shield those costs and pretend we didn't have them, but then ran a $60 million deficit. So the actual costs will show in the budget that we put in.
What is our deficit right now? I'm just curious because I've heard 20 to 40 to 60. Do we know what the number is right now or not yet?
You don't know. So
Okay.
right now we just finished what we call the second quarter books. So the second quarter books shows us we are on track for between 40 or $60 million deficit.
Got it.
Comptroller looked at it too, and her projections were actually a worse deficit.
Yeah.
So we're, these are like this, why don't you know? Well, you don't know because you're not there yet. But it's also based on that the budget that was passed last year was full of speculative items. So they
And
said we're
that's
going
like
to get casino
if you get a
money.
big storm, you have to bring in all these contractor plows, that sort
Yep.
of thing.
Right. So they underestimated the expenses.
Yeah.
And then they overestimated the revenues.
Yep.
Yeah.
So will we get casino compact money? Maybe, but you shouldn't have put it in your budget as
Right.
a certainty. Will we be able to sell the parking ramps? Maybe, but they have $20 million as a certainty. So this is why we need this flexibility if we need to do deficit financing. Is it something you want to do? No. You're only doing it because you've got a couple bad options to choose from.
Yeah. Before we get to snow plows and
Thank you.
potholes and that sort of thing, a couple days ago, New York City's Mamdani, mayor, stood with Governor Kathy Hochul with this big announcement that New York City was getting $1.5 billion to help them in their financial hole.
You followed that, Kelsey.
You're smiling. You're smiling. This was after Tin Cup Day when you had pleaded
Yeah.
with lawmakers saying, we really need help here in Buffalo. Do you feel like shorted by that announcement, or do you feel like maybe one is coming for Buffalo?
I think it's the latter. One is coming for Buffalo.
Okay.
So it sends a signal that New York State's not going to let their cities, which are their economic engines, fall into hard times. Because there goes Buffalo, there goes the Western New York economy, and of course there goes New York City, there goes the whole state's economy. So it's a very positive sign that the governor was able to reach that agreement with the city of New York. And remembering, if they got a bucket of problems, we have a teacup
Yeah.
of problems.
Their
compared to-
deficit is $7,
Eight
$8 billion.
billion, yeah, 8
Ours
billion, yeah.
is, below $1 billion.
Yeah, I
Well
often
below
tell
$1
other
billion.
mayors, I'll trade you your financial problems for mine, but I'm not saying that to the mayor of New York City. His problems are pretty severe.
Okay. So I guess we'll follow up with you on that down the road.
Well, that'll be the story, right? So this is what we're following, and generally the schedule for something like this is these packages usually come as part of the budget. So from now until the budget's due technically in April 1st, sometimes it's a little late.
A couple weeks late, generally.
But that's the time period. So this is when we're trying to dot the I's, cross the T's, show Albany two things. One, we're in trouble. You can look at it from 6 different ways. I invite you to look at it. Tell me my trouble's not trouble. And then 2 is we are going to be responsible. So if you help us out, we're not going to fall back and backslide.
Yeah.
So it's going to be sort of, give us a fishing pole. We'll start doing the fishing. So we're going to need help for 3 years, a 3 years soft landing. And then we're going to be able to stand on our feet again. And we want to be able to stand on our feet. Nobody wants to be in this fiscal position. But with practical stewardship, we won't be in this position again.
You're in another tough place when it comes to the city's infrastructure. So we'll talk about this in 2 parts. You inherited a more than 100-year-old, in some cases, sewer system that is breaking right and left as so far as in 2026. You campaigned, ran a very effective campaign on let's fix the damn potholes,
That's
right? By word, verbatim. That's what this commercial said. And yet you are in a tough place because what are you supposed to do right now in the dead of winter? Elmwood Avenue, Mayor, is a disaster. But what can you do? So you ran on this. The streets are in terrible shape, but you're in the middle of the winter. Where's the cold patch? What can we tell residents about when relief is coming?
Spring and summer.
Good.
That's when you fix potholes. So if you've got a really severe, I'm talking car-eaten pothole, you put cold patch on it, it just lasts for a few weeks.
Literally.
But the answer is hot patch. And the city of Buffalo stopped doing hot patch. What's the difference? Hot patch, the fix lasts years. And cold patch it's almost window dressing. You only really do cold patch like, we just did a construction project. We had to put a new water main in. We got to fill this up until we can do it right. So hot patch is right. But the city of Buffalo right now, we don't own equipment to do hot patch.
Really?
Nope.
Haven't for how long?
A long time.
Interesting.
Our current DPW workers who are out there working hard every day, they're not trained on how to do hot patch. So right now we're entering into agreements with Erie County, with the town of Tonawanda. Last week we took our DPW crew out to see a county barn, to see how they operate, to see what their equipment looks like. And, the DPW crews were, it was a really eye-opening experience. I'm a big believer in go see. Let's go see it. And then soon we're going out to Tonawanda to see how they run their barns, look at their hot patch equipment. We're looking for agreements from the state, from the county, from the town of Tonawanda. Can you help us on the roads that we share together? There's been no intermunicipal agreements about who's going to plow Kenmore Avenue, who's going to pave Kenmore Avenue. But we're opening conversations with all those municipalities, and they are very happy to hear from us.
Great.
Because they haven't heard from Buffalo in a while?
They have not heard from Buffalo in a while. I mean, I'll tell you the story that always sticks in my craw. Recently, Kenmore was doing Kenmore Avenue. They do the north side. They had all the crews out there. They called the city last year and said, we'll do the south side. We're here. You pay for the asphalt. No callback.
Oh, my gosh.
They got one callback saying, we don't have an open asphalt contract. So free labor, all there, and the city can't find a way. So, we're trying to, open back up. So we've had good conversations recently with the New York Power Authority. They're another player. We want to make sure we're all together on the emergency preparedness systems. So we're all talking to each other. But right now, ice is breaking up. Buffalo River is getting clogged up. Fireboat needs repair. Our Cotter's our icebreaker. Our usual private contractor, boats are out of service. So we called NYPA. We just got down to the conversation with them about mutual aid. NYPA's icebreakers are breaking ice in the Buffalo River today because we opened those doors and opened those relationships.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. It's been working.
It's equally as great to hear, honestly, as bad as it is to hear that for years this hasn't been happening. These
We
are
have to
basic
move
things.
forward.
We do have to
Let's
move forward.
just
Sorry.
let's
I-
just,
We gotta do
no,
sorry.
let's
That's,
just say this is positive.
It is. It is
forward
positive.
movement.
You're right. You're right.
But
Not
when the
go
other
back.
entities, come to my office, they have big smiles on their face. And they'll say, we haven't been here in years.
Wow.
But they're really happy to be here now. We're all moving forward together.
Yeah. And as folks who are very close to Kenmore Ave, many of
Oh,
us
yeah.
employees drive over Kenmore Ave every day, so that'd be
Thank
great. Lead, big problem in the city of
yeah.
Buffalo with lead paint, but lead piping as well.
Yeah.
This will air after a press conference you have coming up very soon. You're announcing $1 million. Congressman
Yep.
Kennedy will
Yep.
be there helping with that. Within 10 years, the federal government wants all municipalities to replace these lead pipes, these service lines. There are 40 to 50,000 in the city of Buffalo. The big announcement today is about $1 million to help with this problem. How much do you need to replace the 40 to 50,000? And is that number correct?
You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
$1.5 billion.
Wow.
These rules were passed under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Biden administration was providing funding and resources. The current administration is providing $0 in resources. So, this is not going to get done in 10 years. If, in fact, the federal government doesn't step up to the plate as the original agreement was. But the true problem in Buffalo is why we have a high lead poisoning rate in children is not because of water. It's because of substandard housing conditions
Yeah.
and peeling paint. And there's no help from the federal government on that. There's some help coming from the state government on that. So we are putting together a plan where we're going to take our resources to start doing more inspections. So we want to make it so if a family moves into an apartment with young children, that apartment has been inspected. For years, the city refused to do interior inspections, blaming the county, blaming somebody else. But in our new era of openness, we had a great meeting with the county last week. We're coming at this together. They get grants for lead prevention. We get grants for lead preventions. Their building inspectors, or they call them health inspectors, are trained in one way. Our building inspectors, so we're coming together mutually to figure out how we can get the houses inspected. So that's the real slow-moving tragedy in Buffalo is the level of lead paint poisoning in the city of Buffalo was year in and year out higher than Flint, Michigan's during their water crisis. So that's something we got to get our hands around. We're very appreciative to Congressman Kennedy for helping us bring some federal money home to help us replace some of our aging infrastructure.
Are those inspections, when do you expect those to begin, I guess? I was going to say resume, but begin.
Yeah, look, by the end of the 100-day period,
Okay.
we're going to have a better handle on this. But Rochester's been doing it for 35 years. And their childhood lead poisoning just plummeted down.
Wow. So the results are there.
The results are there. New York City and Rochester have been doing it, for a generation, and their rates have gone down. Buffalo has remained persistently amongst the highest lead poisoning rates in the United States. And it's preventable, and we're going to prevent it.
It is preventable. Yeah.
Yep.
Granville, major topic. You have announced that you plan to release those full internal affairs, that report. I know there's thousands of documents there. Can you give us an update on when that could be released?
Yeah, we have a date, end of February. We're on track to hit that date. I had the expectation that we could get that out right away. And then I was given an index of the documents, and I went, oh, okay, this is not a right away. Some of the reasons it's taking this much time is a lot of the interviews that were conducted and recorded. So there's no transcripts of them. So you actually have to listen to every one of the interviews before you can put it out. And you have to make sure. And why do you do that? You want to make sure if there's witnesses' names in there, that they're redacted. If identifying information of witnesses, addresses, people not involved. So that's where it gets a little tricky. But Commissioner Macy is doing a great job. He's an interim commissioner, but I only refer to him as the commissioner because he's acting fully as the commissioner, and he's been great. He agreed to come in during this stopgap period. He had just retired.
Yeah.
He came back and he said, I'll stay with you as long as you need until you find your permanent commissioner. So I can't say enough about the work that he's done. And there's been crisis after crisis as we're trying to, reimagine and remanage the Buffalo Police Department. But he's getting it in shape for the next commissioner. And I've been so impressed with him. I've asked him to sit on the interviews, for the next commissioner because he definitely has a very fresh look at the Buffalo Police Department. But as I said, hats off. He was doing a little private work. He was at home with his kids,
Yeah.
and we called and said, "Could you come and step in?" And had some conversations, I'm sure, with his family. Came back, said, "I'll do it." How long? And I said, "I don't know. It might be a month. It might be 6 months." I said, "I'll do it." So, and I'm hoping that at the end of this, that he actually stays recommitted to the Buffalo Police Department in a capacity. But it's really hard to get an interim to come in who's not applying for the job. So, he made it clear at the start, "I don't want to be commissioner. I'll be your commissioner for a little while." So really couldn't be happier. And I had no relationship with Commissioner Macy until after we interviewed him. I thought, well, I think this guy can do the job. But the real question is, do you want to do the job?
Right.
And he definitely is. He's tackled it. So
He's
hats off.
He's excellent. And I hope that you are successful in persuading him to maybe change his mind to become the full commissioner. Maybe it won't happen. I don't know. But you're right. He's
I think I've lost that fight.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's fine. If
Yeah.
I see him, I'll try to
Yeah,
put
see
a
if
good
you can
word in
action there.
edgewise.
But I want his voice
He's been
when we
great.
pick the finalist. I want his voice in the room because
That kind
it's
of
a very
consistency.
modern look at policing.
It's hugely important. City also dealing with sort of a similar crime issue. One of its police officers over the weekend charged with shooting and killing his wife, Officer Lance Woods. You spoke to this a little bit over the past couple of days. Really unfortunate situation. Sad all around. I do want to ask if there's any updates in this investigation into whether Buffalo is looking at any other members of the police department who are involved in this case at this point.
Yeah, so these are the things like these. Let me back up.
Sure.
So you can't think of a more unspeakable, horrible tragedy. Domestic violence ending in a murder, young children in and around the household, just bad stuff. So for the families involved, it's a tragedy that's going to be just ongoing for a long time. Let me just clear. Domestic violence happens in every walk of life. Men who are rich, men who are poor, men who are successful, who are unsuccessful. You name the profession, there's domestic violence in there. So it's not restricted. Some people think, well, I know who commits domestic violence. It's in every sector. But there's a 24-hour hotline in Western New York, domestic violence hotline. It's 716-884-6000. Someone you know, someone you love is being subjected to domestic violence, call that hotline. Because one thing we know about domestic violence, once it starts, it gets worse.
Yep.
And if you live in a household with a gun and you are a victim of domestic violence, the chances of you becoming a murder victim skyrocket. So, it's something to a lot of us think, well, they'll work it out. It's their problem. It's all of our problems. So call that hotline if you have any problems. So this is how these cases work in New York State. Police officer involved in a shooting, whether on duty or off duty, the authority goes straight to the New York State Attorney General. So the New York State Attorney General is now leading this investigation, not Buffalo, not Lewiston, and then they will lead the investigation. And if there's a prosecution, the prosecution is done through the Attorney General's
We got a
office.
tip from a family member of the victim that said there is another Buffalo member of the Buffalo Police Department who is involved in this investigation. Is that the case?
We're looking at things now, and I hope by the end of the day we should have a timeline prepared that we can release to the media. But
This family member told us Officer Woods showed up to D District when this thing was committed in Sanborn. It seems odd.
if you can hold to the end of the day,
Understood.
there are so many moving parts on this, and the last thing I want to do is get ahead of the facts.
Understood.
But as we speak now, we're putting together a whole timeline on this thing that transpired over multiple days
Right.
in multiple jurisdictions
Exactly.
in 2 different counties.
Right.
So there's a lot of information coming in.
Very complex.
And it's been, it's always 24 hours after one of these things, the information that comes in, it comes into like a big funnel, right? Sure. But then you got to filter it out the small end of the funnel.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing now is we're filtering it out.
Okay, very good. I think that's all the time we have. Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This was
Incredible.
one of the longest, if not the
Almost 30
longest,
minutes.
sit down we've had with a mayor in a long time, if not ever, really.
Yes.
So we
Really
appreciate
appreciate
this. Hopefully we can continue this. And of course, we will be posting part of this interview on News 4 at 5:30 today.
That's great. Kelsey,
Appreciate
Dave,
it.
thanks so much